Hey friends, welcome back to a very special episode of the Distortion Den. And look who finally made his way back to the den, my good buddy Andy Curran. My co-host is back.
Right? I for a second there, I thought you didn't like me. I was like, man, what happened? I thought I was the co-host of the Distortion Den, and then radio silence. But I get it. You know, you got to spread the love around. But anyway, good to see you, Deke.
Yeah, it's really fantastic to see you, Andy. And I'm super psyched to have you on because we're going to talk about this fantastic new release from your band, E.O.N, Stygian Waves, that just came out back on March 28th. And as you can see, Andy, my copy is still sealed. I was waiting for you to show up today because I'm going to break.
Mint in the box. I love it. Yeah. No, we're, my God, I was like we're all very excited that thing's finally out. It's been a long time coming. If I would be totally truthful with you, man, we've been sitting on the record since the end of last year, just kind of tweaking, trying to find the right time to release it. And you know, the label was really into doing what they call like a waterfall release on it. So, you know, we came out last Halloween with Not Dead Yet, and then started trickling songs out. But you know, like you and I talk about parenting, and it's nice that the birds have left the nest finally. All these little, Alex calls them our 11 little children. They're all out there now. They've left the nest. So it's been a long time coming, but dude, very proud of the record that we made.
Well, yeah, you should be totally proud of it. And we're going to get into it shortly. But Andy, I thought at the end of the show, what I'm going to tell you and tell everybody out there is as you know, when you came on last year, when we did this deep dive.
Oh, yes. The Whiskey and the Devil.
And you remember I did a top 12 or top 10 all-time Andy non-hatch songs.
Yep.
And so today I thought at the end of this episode, I'll do a top 6 starter pack for all the Envy and None people out there that need to check out some songs. So
love it. Okay.
And also one other thing is I'm going to ask you what 3 of your desert island classic albums would be at the end of the show.
Okay.
On a fun note.
I'll get the wheels turning. I'll divide my brain and I'll think about those. I got a couple already teed up for you, but yeah, I'll hit me, buddy. We'll just rock and roll, and whatever you want to chat about, you got me.
Okay. So like I asked you this time last year, where are we at with the Del Boys?
Oh my God. I ran into Danko Jones. Okay. And, I'll shake my fist and go, come on, Danko. Anyway, we both got invited to the Bubbles movie. You know, that there was a premiere of it. And Bubbles and the Shit Rockers movie was really, really funny. And it premiered in Toronto. And they kind of did like I don't know, I want to call it like a friends and family kind of hangout before and afterwards. Uh-huh. And I ran into Danko Jones, and he was there with his son, who was really nice young kid. I'm going to say young, like probably maybe at the end of high school or just getting into college and stuff. So Danko looks at me and he goes, "Hey man, what's going on with the Del Boys?" And I was like, oh my God. I looked at his son and I go, your dad has been talking about the Del Boys for probably 4 or 5 years now. Mm-hmm. So the ball is in his court. I said, don't let him skew this like he's waiting for me. We've got Ray Coburn in the wings waiting. Ray, you know, was a member of Honeymoon Suite, founding member of Honeymoon Suite, but plays keyboards with Kim Mitchell and with Roger from Supertramp. He's like just an amazing keyboard player and a good buddy of mine. Ray and I went to school. He was the goalie on the hockey team, junior hockey team. I used to hit him in the head with slap shots. He was not too happy about that. Chased me around one of the practices, said, "I'm sick and tired of you hitting me in the head with pucks, Curran." But anyway, we remained friends. And then there was a band called National Velvet, and Tim Welsh was the guitar player in that. And Tim was also a Del Boy. So I just started busting Danko's chops, just saying, you know, Like, come on, man. We've been talking about the Del Boys forever. He's a busy dude. And you know, Danko Jones is like, they're on rinse and repeat touring in Europe. So it's hard to nudge in there. I have a folder on my desktop in my studio here that says the Del Boys. And I'm starting to think about, you know, if I don't hear from Danko soon, I'm just going to take over the project and I'll put it out without him. So there's your message, Danko. You put up or shut up. Okay. Come on, dude.
That's awesome.
Get off your butt, get off tour. Let's finish these tracks.
So in the Del Boys, will you be playing bass or are you just doing some straight singing? Like,
we originally, you know, it's funny because Danko and I were talking about two bands in particular that were major influences for both of us. And it was Van Halen and Deep Purple. And we were talking about, could you imagine a car crash with those two bands or styles of things, right? Yeah. And, you know, enter Ray Coburn, amazing keyboard player. And we were talking about distorted B3 organs that, you know, were indicative of the sound of Deep Purple. And Danko always loved Van Halen as I did. Van Halen 1, I just played the living daylights out of that record, possibly a candidate for a Lost Island record. But, you know, and so I started feeding him riffs and they were riffs that I was playing guitar on and bass and little seeds of vocal ideas. But I always said to Danko, like, you should be the vocalist on it. I think at one point he said, no, the two of us should sing. But, you know, if I had my way, I'd just prefer to be back playing bass and letting Danko take front and center. But that might be a question for Danko if you ever get him on the Distortion Den to ask him two questions. A, are you absolutely going to do this one day? Or is this just like pie in the sky talk? And two, is it E.O.N. Curran singing on it? But I think it would be a lot of fun, man. I've got a lot of respect for Danko, and if you've ever met him in person, there's this kind of Clark Kent vibe about him where he's this calm, mild-mannered guy when you talk to him, and then he gets on stage and he's possessed by the devil. It's awesome. It's like he stepped into the phone booth and he's like a different dude, right? And I love that. I love that he can turn on the jets, right? And I've been accused of the same thing. You know, when I get it on stage, there's a whole different mindset for me. But all that to say, you know, it would be fun to do it with them, and you know, I like the idea of side projects outside of Coney and Envy, and I've got lots of friends that I respect, and you know, I've done songwriting with Kim Mitchell over the past, and Gordie Johnson from Big Sugar, and so it's something that I love. I love collaborating with different musicians, especially if they're my buddies.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question here. This day and age, you know, back in the day, I was surprised to find out years later that, like, you know, I think it was Steve Hunter who played on Aerosmith's early records, and Dick Wagner did some Kiss solos on Destroyer. Have you ever ghosted on anybody's record and not gotten credited?
Okay, I have to tell you, yes, I have, and 9 times out of 10, it's usually projects that I've been working on, and sometimes it would have been, you know, if I was the producer on it, and we couldn't really get the results that we wanted, and I would quietly go in and sneak in and you know, touch up the bass a little bit just to put it in the pocket. But I was very respectful doing that. I would never, you know, like, for instance, Deke, if it was you and you were the bass player, I'd be like, yeah, great job, dude. I'll see you tomorrow. Right. And then I send you home, and then I go in and fix up a little, tighten it up, just do a little bit of house cleaning, and then come in and go, hey, Deke, you should listen to that bass take that you did last night. That was really, really cool. I have a listen to it. Right. And 9 times out of 10 guys are like, wow, yeah, that really feels good. Right. But I will tell you this, it would usually be the idea would usually be initiated by the engineers that I'm working with, either Vic
Right.
Florencia or Alf Annabellini would say to me, dude, like this, we need this. It's not quite right. You know, pick up a bass and do it. So I always try to, especially with young acts that I'm working with, or if I've been asked to produce, I try to get the best out of the musicians in the room. But honestly, I could count it on one hand the amount of times it's happened. But the more you dig on this, the more you can find out about so and so played on this record, and you know. And sometimes I'm shocked to hear about it, you know, because they're favorite records of mine. You know, I think I read something about some Aerosmith records, or you know, maybe even UFO records or something, where they were like, "Oh yeah, so and so played on that," and I'm like, "Really?" I always thought it was like the band, right? So you never know what happens behind the scenes. And I think drugs and alcohol play a lot of part of that in bands that we grew up listening to. You know, if they weren't functioning in the studio, they just send them home and they just fix it, but they never tell the artist that, right? But I think there's a drummer, and his name escapes me right now, and I think he played in Nine Inch Nails. I think maybe Josh Freese is his name. But if for anybody that's interested in that sort of topic, like Google Josh's name, and it's incredible the amount of records that he's played on. Just a top-notch LA musician, and I think he's like the 911 call from producers going, "Oh my God, we didn't get this drum track. Let's call Josh, and he'll come in and nail it." You know, I think my buddy Randy Cook's been called in to do that quite a few times. So it's something that happens quite a lot. But when it happens to me, I keep it on the down low. I've never been. The names will go to my grave. Put it that way.
I wasn't expecting you to out anybody, but I was just kind of curious. I meant to ask you that last time I had you on, so I thought I wrote it down for this one. So moving on, what's going on in the world of the Hatch?
Okay, so the Hatchers, we had a busy couple months. We went into a recording studio in Toronto. Okay, so long story short is when we played Oakville, the Oakville Performing Arts Center, maybe about a year ago, we took advantage of Dave Ketchum being in Toronto. And we said to Dave, the day after we play the show, it's a Sunday, would you mind staying a couple more days, and let's go in and record 2 new tracks. So we got Dave to stay over. We cut bed tracks at a recording studio called Halo, and some friends of ours in Hamilton run it. And it's a great spot for anybody that's in the GTA area, man. Like I encourage you to go to Halo Recording or Halo Studios. I forget what the URL is, but we cut 2 bed tracks in there. And then life got in the way, man. Like everybody got busy. I was working on the Ambient Nuns stuff. The Whiskey and the Devil record came out. Sean was touring with Lee Aaron. Carl was doing solo dates. Hatch, we were playing it. We never finished these tracks off ever. So early this year, we went into Noble Street Studios in Toronto. And Carl, myself, and Sean Kelly went in and recorded a boatload of guitars. So we had the bed tracks, bass and drums already done. And we're just sifting through those. Vic Florencia, Juno award-winning engineer and producer, came in with us, and we got some really great results on it. So Carl and I have to get in there and finish off some vocals, and Sean's got a few sort of icing sugar guitar parts to put on it. And then we're not quite sure what we want to do with the with those 2 songs. Like we're talking about when we might release them. And then last thing I'll tell you is that we've been working closely with our friends at Anthem Records, and we've got a project that hopefully we'll be able to tell you about a little bit later on this year. But it's all sort of revolves around the debut record and the anniversary of the debut record, and trying to come out with something special to punctuate that. I know we did some, we played the Elma Combo and a while back and did the first album in its entirety, but we never really did like full fanfare on the debut record. So we're cooking up something that we hope will come out later on this year with Anthem Records.
Woof, that's
I don't want to be the spoiler on that. I'm just telling you we're cooking up stuff, and maybe those 2 tracks might be part of that. I don't know.
Okay, cool. And you know what? I'm gonna already hit you up. You're gonna come back on the show and talk all about it when it does drop on the street.
Deal.
Okay. The thing is, also another album in your catalog that's celebrating an anniversary this year is Friction, which is 40 years young, which is crazy. Now, when you guys rolled into T-Bay back in October as a fan of all things Coney, I really enjoyed hearing, State Line and Burning for Love. I mean, that was pretty cool to hear. I kind of wish you guys would have deep dived the whole record like you did over in Europe like a week later.
Yeah.
But I'm getting picky. But it was really cool to hear that album, and of course to hear your Heaven's on the Other Side, which was on Postcard from Germany. And that song really came across live. So whatever you got cooking up new, I think it's going to be pretty ass kicking.
Well, thanks. We had a good time in T-Bay, and not only is it Dave Ketchum's hometown, and we wanted to get up there, but if you recall, when we were talking at that show, I mentioned to you that we were going to go to Europe right after that. So we played in Manchester, and we played just outside of Paris, France, and those two shows were the deep dives. Playing Friction in its entirety, which we had never done before. And, we had a lot of fun doing the debut record in its entirety. And then we did a show in Oakville, the one that I mentioned to you, where we played Out of Hand in its entirety. And a lot of bands are doing that. We're not the only ones. But it's a really cool way to just, it's like you were sitting at home and you drop the needle and you go from song 1 to song 10 or whatever, right? So, Friction was a record that it was a difficult time for the band, and it was a transition with a new drummer, and I took a back seat on the lead vocals, and so it was a chapter of time that had a lot of friction. And that's why we aptly titled it that. But the European fans, there's a bunch of them that have been quite vocal, saying, why won't you guys play more songs from the Friction records? So we ended up doing that in both France and in the UK. And we recorded the shows just to, we were like, okay, well, in case we have a really good night, we should record these. And so we're also talking about maybe doing a similar thing that we did from Postcard from Germany. Maybe we could say Postcard from the UK or from France or something like that, right? So we're kind of going through the recordings from Europe just to have a listen and go, okay, were we on our game that day, and how many fixes are we going to have to do? Like, we had a few little train wrecks on stage and cables getting kicked out, so we might need to do a few fix-ups on that one, but I learned from when I was working at Anthem with the guys in Rush that if you have these opportunities like we did in France and the UK and you don't record them, then it's a missed opportunity. Those guys always believe that, okay, let's just record it anyway. And at least we've got it in the can and we can figure out what we're going to do with it. So I took a page out of that book to go, well, if we don't record it, then we know what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. So we recorded both shows, and we'll see what happens, Deke. Like maybe we'll take some songs from France and from the UK and put them on one record. They're all conversations that are happening right now.
Well, that's fantastic. That's great to get the lowdown on Coney, because as far as I'm concerned, the more Coney, the better. So
you are officially a cone head. I will knight you from afar on each shoulder. Deke is a cone head.
Yeah, thank you. I take that with great honor, and I'll fly the flag.
Nice.
Forever.
Nice.
Now, before we get into the main attraction here, the current Envy and None record, I noticed that Envy and None is participating on the upcoming Triumph Magic Power All-Star tribute album.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing Blinding Light Show, which I think will be fantastic for me to hear it, because I think that song totally fits the vibe.
Well, yeah, and listen, so the way that project kind of came about is Alex Lifeson and myself are friends with the boys in Triumph. We know all of them. And Alex specifically plays a lot of golf with Gilmore, and both of them are one of the most intimidating things that ever happened to me was I was invited to play golf with Gilmore, Alex Lifeson, and Tom Cochran. And each of those guys have handicaps under 10. And they're unbelievable golfers. And then yours truly is shanking balls off trees and into the forest and into sand traps. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty good. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm just like, I can't believe I'm golfing with these guys, right? Because they're just so steady and consistent. And I love playing golf, but I only get out like 6 or 7 times a year. So they were like, Andy, you should just play more golf. You'd be a really good golfer. And I just, I prefer on my spare time hockey and tennis if I could, and then golf's a third, right? But the relationships with Triumph, and I'm friends with the guys. I was involved in helping get the anniversary of Allied Forces together. I worked with them closely in their record company. So I love those guys, and they're friends. I consider them friends. Hatch toured with Triumph. We opened up for them on I forget what tour, but we played out west with them. And we've remained friends. We've been into Metalworks many times. They're just the sweetest guys, all of them. So I got approached by Gil and by Mike saying, would you be interested in being part of the record? And they also contacted Alex separately and said, Alex, would you be interested in being part of the record? Now, the premise of it was Mike Klink, the producer, was going to sort of handpick musicians for each track. He was going to pick a drummer, a vocalist, a guitar player, a bassist, all that kind of stuff, right? And when I spoke with Alex about that, the two of us felt that it would be cooler to just do it more like a band. And so I went back and said, instead of Alex and I appearing on separate tracks or the same tracks as hired guns or musicians or just like studio guys on it, why don't you let Envy of None take a crack at this? And they were like, yeah, go for it. So the Blinding Light Show has always been a favorite song of mine. And so I called Maya Wynn up and I said, Maya, we've been asked to do this. I think you could do a great job on this. And why don't we just kind of put the Envy of None stamp on this song? And so we did. We deconstructed it. I'm going to tell you, when you hear it, it sounds more like an Envy of None song than it does a Triumph song. But then you go, wait a sec. Okay, there's the lyrics and there's the vocal and I would say if there's anything we kept true to form, it was Maya's vocal and lyrical and melody approach. She didn't stray a lot from it, but she really put her stamp on it, and it's like clearly a Maya Wynn vocal, but it's really trippy and kind of ambient and heavy. And when I talked to Gil Moore about it, he said that we were one of the few bands, respectfully, that really took a step outside the box and put our stamp on it. We didn't just do a cover version of it. Most of the covers that I've heard are very much how Triumph would do it. And we kind of reverse engineered that and said, no, this is how Envy of None would do it. And, I got the sense in talking to Gil that maybe Mike Levine was like, yeah, okay, it's pretty cool, but Gil loved it. I think Rick was the first guy I played it for, because Rick actually wrote the song. When I found out he actually wrote the song prior to being a member of Triumph, he brought that in from an old band and brought it in, and Triumph did their thing on it, right? Yep. But I've heard a couple versions, with Sebastian Bach and Todd Kearns, and they've got some amazing players, and Phil X on it. He's just like shredding and playing like a mofo on it. So it's I think people are going to love it. But strap yourself in. And Envy of None. We got a lot of, hey, this sounds nothing like Coney Hatch or Rush. And it was like, yeah. Mission accomplished, right? So really all I'd say is respectfully, we wanted to honor the song, but we really put our stamp on it.
Well, that's fantastic. And I wouldn't, well, now it's a party. I wouldn't expect you to do anything less of it not sounding like an Envy of None. It almost would be disappointing if you didn't at this point. You know what I mean? So on to Stygian Waves. Now, who came up with the title? Let's start with that.
Okay, so let's start with the name of the band. Envy of None came from an idea. Full transparency. We didn't even have a name for this project when we started back on the debut record, and so I kind of started this folder, and I just came up with this name, Middle of Nowhere, and because we were kind of in the middle of nowhere. It was during the pandemic, and everybody was in their homes, and we were recording remotely. And I was like, so I just kind of, as a working title, called the project Middle of Nowhere. I did a quick Google search and found out that there was already a band out there called Middle of Nowhere. So I was talking to David Steinberg, who is Rush's attorney, but he's a great drummer. He played with Stib Baders and the Dead Boys, and he had his own band called the Mods, and he played with the Jitters and Strange Advance, like quite an accomplished Canadian drummer. And I said, oh man, I got to come up with a new name for it. He goes, I got one that I've been saving for a rainy day. It's called Envy of None. And I said, oh dude, I love that. Where the hell did that come from? I think there's a Greek philosopher, and his name is Ovid, and there's all these quotes. And if you go, if you search, online, you can see all these quotes from this philosopher back back before the dawn of ages, And anyway, this one quote said, I forget the exact quote, but it said, blah, 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 and you will be the envy of none. And we kind of like that because we're not trying to brag. We're not trying to be a super group or anything. So we thought the name was kind of humorous. Like, okay, we're going to start this thing and we'll be the envy of none. Who gives a crap, right? We're just going to do what we love doing and we're going to do it. And so, but part of that quote was a reference to Stygian Waves. And I believe it has something to do with the river Styx and riding through the, this river on your way to hell. And so we were like, okay, this river is leading straight to hell. We're at the gates of hell. Alex loved the idea of calling it Stygian Waves. There was a lot of concern with our label that they couldn't even pronunciate it properly. They couldn't spell it properly. They thought people were going to get mixed up. And there was this funny part where one of the guys at the label said, well, could we talk you into calling the album Permanent Waves instead? And I was like, no, we can't, right? But anyway, Alex was the one who really loved it. And we thought that it was a cool name. And it, so we've spelt it phonetically. So hopefully people can figure out how to pronunciate it. But it's really just an extension of the name of the band and where the quote came from.
Wow. I did read, by the way, I gotta thank Chip at Chipster PR and Consulting. He sent me about a month ago the bio and some tracks and whatnot. So thanks, Chip. And I did read about the Greek poet
philosopher.
There. Philosopher. And
we love Chipster. Thank you, Chipster, for all that you do.
Absolutely. So, new album, 11 songs, 43 minutes. Was it? Is it a conscious effort to say in today's day and age with people's, limitations on listening, to keep the songs in a shorter realm? Because I think some of your songs, you guys could really just keep going after the 3-4 minutes,
Yeah. Well, no, to be honest with you, man, like there was not, really wasn't a conscious effort to lengthen or shorten any songs. It's weird. I'm learning so much from working with Alex Lifeson, but we always had a similar philosophy behind a song, that it was less about, listen to my amazing bass part, or listen to, I'm going to show off. And he was even, he's been quite vocal about saying that he was apprehensive of doing guitar solos, but he's added quite a few guitar solos this time around. But our goal was always to serve the song. And if you can get the message across, Deke, in 3 to 4 minutes, then no problem, right? But we stretched out we've stretched out on Look Inside on the first record was a longer song. Stygian Waves, the title track, is a longer song. As we're developing songs and we're changing, we're really collaborating, and the majority of them, Maya came in with almost a completely finished song with Raindrops, and then I think with for me, in terms of a song that might have been more complete, Under the Stars, that I worked on with Alfie, was quite mapped out. But for the most part, when we start working on songs, they could start with a 30-second bit that I send everybody and go, hey, do you guys like this? And they're like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then we start cutting and pasting and lengthening it, right? And with a song like Thrill of the Chase, the arrangement's pretty messed up in that. Like I challenge people to go in and go, okay, what the heck is going on here? Because it kind of goes from this funk intro into a weird verse, but there's no real, there's no real structure to it, like a traditional structure to it. So we try to be very open about our arrangements in terms of where they go. But again, serving the song, if we can feel good about it after three or four minutes, then we're like, yeah, that sounds really good. There have been times like Stygian Waves, the title track, where we're like, hell man, let's lengthen this. Let's have some fun on it. Let's extend the outro. Let's try some crazy stuff on it. So I would say that really the title track, Stygian Waves, is the only one that we were consciously like, no, let's lengthen this. Let's have some fun with it.
Yeah. And, going back, you're talking about Thrill of the Chase. Yeah, to me, I'm not a big new wave guy. I'm more of a hard rock.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I don't deviate out of the sandbox, but I have followed the career of course, yourself. And when I had you on, when we discussed like already 3 years ago, the debut Envy and None, I said to you that when you dropped the Caramel record, and that was what, 96, 97 ish, about, and coming off your Coney, your Whiskey and the Devil, and your Soho 69, when I first bought Caramel and I listened to it, because I read that Andy Curran has a new band, and I'm like, fantastic. So I go buy Caramel CD, and I'm like, whoa, like this is
you're like WTF, what's going on here, right?
It's like, wow. But then after a few listens, it's like, okay, I get it, and then all those years later, when COVID came and you released everything on the streams like Leisure World and stuff from Drug Plan, and then I totally got it. So to me, like I told you before, I think you were on this trajectory that leads up to Envy and None, because you just didn't stay the straight rock guy. So thanks to you, you actually expanded my musical horizons with your sound. So
yeah, well, thanks for saying that. That was a conscious journey for me. When I signed a publishing deal with Sony ATV, the producer Gary Furness and the engineer Lenny DeRose were really pushing me to just try to broaden my horizons and to step out of the box a little bit, right? Because I think I was known for, in my comfort zone was like 4 on the floor, cock rock, in your face, melt some faces and go for it, right? And so with Caramel, I picked my moments on there. There's a song called Summertime, or Sex is a 4-letter word. Those are still got a lot of teeth to it, right? But I started to really enjoy trying to get a little bit trippy and moody and use some clean guitar tones. And that journey started with Caramel and continued into Drug Plan and Leisure World. And I think for me, it was rewarding because I kind of stepped outside the box, and I could always go put the old tennis shoes back on and write with Coney and scratch that itch of the 4 on the floor, double guitar attack, like a Thin Lizzy or an Aerosmith type of thing. But with Envy and those other projects that you mentioned, it allows me to stretch a little bit and try some different sonic stuff and just get creative, and like it. I'll really dumb this down because, a variety is the spice of life for me. I'm the first guy to tell you, if I buy a Michael Schenker record or a UFO record and it's nothing like what I expected, I'm pissed. I'm like, what is going on? I want my old UFO. And so I could see fans, that some of the fans that have not embraced Envy of None, and I get it because it's a total departure, right? But on the flip side of the coin, and this is where I want to dumb it down for you, when we get up and we eat and we drink and whatever, we don't eat the same things every day. You change it up, you know.
Yeah.
You change up the shows that you watch, or maybe the people that you hang out with. So that's my mantra with music, is like I'm trying to carve some new ground. I'm trying to break the mold a little bit. I'm trying to stretch right and left and wear some of my influences on the sleeves. And it has been really rewarding that the journey that I'm on with Envy of None, that people actually like it. because we're writing, basically, it sounds really arrogant almost. We're writing to please ourselves first, and then if people like it after that, we're like, mission accomplished. We liked it and we hope you like it, type thing, right?
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And I mean, I even read in the PR notes that even Alex said, and I'm quoting him here, he said, "I'm proud of my past, but I finally feel disconnected from it." And I think that's huge, because I've seen, I mean, he's been quite a bit on my YouTube feed lately, obviously talking about the new record. And it's just a lot of people are still talking about Rush. But when you look at the big picture, Rush hasn't toured in 10 years. Neil passed away 5 years, I believe. And, you know, it's like, cut the guy some slack. So when I read something like that, where he says he's disconnected, like he's proud of his past, but he's moving on with something new. And some people, I guess, have a hard time letting go. And
they do. But I read an article from David Gilmour from Pink Floyd saying the identical thing, you know, like you do have to look at it from an artist's perspective. And if you buy the new David Gilmour record expecting that it's going to be Pink Floyd and it's not, then, you know, cut the guy some slack, that he's an artist, you know. And right. if you're a painter or you're a visualist, are you painting the same thing every day? No, you know, put your colors on the canvas and that's one painting, and then you move on and you paint another one. You don't just keep repeating that painting, right? So, but it's a fine line, because I just told you, you know, if I buy something and I have an expectation of it, I don't want that artist to deviate. I want that, right? I want that comfort zone. So I get it. It's a tough place to be when you're a fan and you buy something and it's nothing like you anticipated. But we've been very vocal to say, hey, this ain't Coney and this ain't Rush. So don't buy it if you're wanting a Coney Hatch fix or a Rush fix. And with Alex, he's been respectfully quite vocal to say, well, if you want Rush, then go back and listen to our 5 decades worth of music, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
go listen to that. Yeah.
So there. But I have to say, this new album, and you know what? I remember back in the day, you know, me and you grew up rock fans, so you're reading the press release, or not press releases, but you're reading your Hit Parader and your Circus magazine, and they talk to the bands and the artists or whatever, and they'd say, yeah, man, our new album is way better than the one before it. And then you listen to it and you're like, well, no, not really. But I can honestly say that this is no sophomore slump with you guys. I mean, you guys nailed it out of the park. And I'm just not saying that to ass kiss. Like seriously, I find it a bit more musically up-tempo-ish. And speaking of Alex, I find a lot of his guitar is up front. It reminds me of the sound of Power Windows and Hold Your Fire era. And you know what? It's really a fantastic listen. So lots to be proud of.
Thank you for saying that. And I do think we've upped our game on it, and musicians are really guilty in general for saying, oh yeah, this new thing that I wrote's the best thing ever, you know, like I think about my beloved Cheap Trick, right? And and you know, they'll come out and they'll say, this is our best record. And I'm like, I love you guys. And I'm so lucky that I got to be friends with Robin Zander, but I'm, I got asked to do this interview for a UK magazine, and they wanted me to do a deep dive on Cheap Trick, right? And go through every record. And I was kind of like, they lost it on this one. This ain't Heaven Tonight. This is not in color, and so, but there have been subsequent records where they do have some great songs on it. But it's tough to get over that sometimes, because you always think, oh no, the new stuff is way better than our old stuff. God, I'd love to see Aerosmith try to outdo what they did on Toys in the Attic or Rocks. Like, good luck on beating those records.
Yeah.
Right?
No kidding. So if somebody was to come up to you on the street and say, hey, Andy, what have you been up to? And they've been under a rock for the last 3 years and they don't know anything about Andy and None. How would you describe your band's sound? Because to me, I can't really pigeonhole it to a certain, I hear different elements of different bands. And if you want, I can give you a couple of my examples. You might think I'm off my rocker. So I find that the beginning of Under the Stars, the first few bars, it totally reminds me of something that the Police would do, the vibe. And especially that crack of the snare drum, bam.
Yep.
And then you guys just go totally left from it. But I hear like just little snippets of the vibe. And what was the other one? Thrill of the Chase. Almost that guitar tone halfway through it. I hear it almost has that Day Tripper vibe by the Beatles. That now, and then not played in that key. I'm not off the Beatles, but I just hear stuff like that. I hear a bit of the Cars, just stuff I'm familiar with, and it's neat. But it's not like the whole song sounds. When I say Cars, I'm not saying there's anything that sounds like just what I needed, but I think it's pretty cool that I can point, wow, that sounds kind of neat. And then you guys just shift into your whole Envy and None original vibe, and I'm okay. Yeah. So you can tell me I'm crazy, and I
no. Listen, I think the Police reference is an interesting one, because I think musicians are guilty sometimes of at least I am, of wearing some of my influences on the sleeve, right? And if you listen to Coney Hatch, I don't think you would ever say, "Oh, Andy Curran's a reggae fan." You just wouldn't pick that up. Yeah. But I absolutely adore Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and I love Lee Scratch Perry. I listen to ambient dub music, and so the conversation that I had with Joe Vitale, who is the drummer on Under the Stars, prior to going into it and asking him to play the tracks, and Joe's a hero of mine. He was in Joe Walsh's band, and he played with the Eagles, and he's just such an amazing drummer. And I said, despite the fact that the tone is completely different, the opening bass line of Under the Stars is a reggae feel, but it's distorted bass. And I'd love you to give this thing a bit of a reggae feel to it. And maybe after the reggae, when we get into the chorus, we'll straighten up the groove a little bit, right? And so I think that's what you're picking up on, is there's a nod to a reggae vibe on that. And so injecting different styles or eras or tones, even with that Day Tripper part that you mentioned, oftentimes Alex and I will talk about bands that we grew up with, whether it was the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or something, or Tones, or even Pink Floyd. So there's a tone in that guitar sound that is reminiscent of Day Tripper or Satisfaction, and that was intentional. That was Alex going, I love that tone of that guitar, and you hear it and you go, whoa, that sounds like it could be that could be Day Tripper, right? So, but these are influences that come out as you're writing on it, and the first album, I think I was listening to a lot of industrial stuff. I was listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails. I was listening to a lot of Massive Attack. And there's that ambient bit of an anger, dark tone to it. So sometimes those come out in the writing, Deke. But, you know, I think if someone was to just like go, give me the elevator pitch. I don't want to listen to Envy of None until you tell me what it sounds like. I use this analogy. Picture Garbage, the band Garbage, having a car crash with maybe Massive Attack and a tiny bit of Nine Inch Nails mixed in there with some, but the 80s influences that you're talking about in the Cars, that comes out in the pop sensibility. And both Alf and I are big pop fans. We love Depeche Mode. You know, I could go on and tell you about the whole Ultravox that we listen to, and you know, the Cure and bands like that, and so there's moments of it where you're like, oh, you know, I would joke with Alf and say, I love that guitar part they just sent over, but actually the Cure just called and they've asked for their guitar part back. You know,
that's funny. And you know what? I can honestly say that this is definitely a headphones album. Everybody out there that's watching this, you at least got to listen to it on your cans or in your earbuds one time through, because I found like listening to it through the computer files, I missed so much.
Yeah.
And once I streamed it and added it to my Apple library, it's just like stuff's moving parts everywhere, you know, left, right. It's like, it's such a well sounded, produced album, and you know, full kudos to you guys. I mean, Alf and Maya and Alex, and I mean, it's some real killer stuff, but you really need to hear it on the buds.
I agree, dude, and thank you for saying that. There was a lot of TLC spent on the tones of this record and the balances, and it's a journey. You should put the headphones on, because you miss it if you're, you know. I'm still hearing parts going, oh yeah, I forgot about that overdub, and oh yeah, I forgot that Maya did that vocal part, you know. So we spent like Maya, I'm not even lying, dude, there were tracks that she recorded, you know, maybe 50 plus vocal tracks of harmonies and layers and oohs and ahs, and she really treats her vocal, her voice like an instrument, you know. She'll do a breath. She'll do a whole track of breath, syncopated ha, ha, ha in the background, and we'll tuck it in, or oohs and ahs, right? So she's a freaking mad scientist with her vocal tones. And like I said, there was a lot of TLC spent on the tones on this. For me, as a bass player, dude, I'm telling you, there's 3 or 4 songs on there where I'll start out with an electric bass, and then I'll switch to a keyboard bass, and then a part I'll add a fretless bass in there, and then maybe end off with a 12-string bass, all because they have different tones. And as the song's changing, you might not notice it, but you know, I'll challenge you to go back and listen to a song and then go, oh wow, halfway through that song, Andy just changed the bass tone. A completely different instrument. I did that intentionally, you know. Under the Stars went straight from you know, a 4-string bass distorted into the chorus with a Moog keyboard bass, out of the chorus into a fretless, and then finished off with the electric bass again, right? Just to give it that variety and to take the listener's ears somewhere else and give it a different vibe. So all of us are guilty of that. We did that intentionally.
Wow, that's killer. What about Handle with Care? That's kind of got like you know, pretty different cool vibe as well. Like did you switch up instruments on that? Like what's going, because it just slowly builds, and like Maya delivers a killer vocal on it. I mean, it's shit, man.
Thank you, dude. I think that's my favorite track on the record, for a lot of different reasons. Like Alf came to me with the original idea that was about 30 seconds. And it was like, it was kind of like a groove with a drum machine and some keyboards. And he was like, I don't know what to do with this. And I was like, I absolutely know what to do with it. Hey, send that puppy over. And just the way the track was feeling felt very syncopated, but it wasn't punctuated on Alf's early demos. So I grabbed a bass and I doubled it left and right, and I gave it a 16th, like jigga, 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 all the way through. It's all 16th notes, so that it's very hypnotic feeling through it. When you hit the breakdown or the middle 8, we deconstruct it, and I play some fretless and move around in there. But Maya and I worked closely on the whole lyrical content. I kind of had the idea of the chorus, if you see me, handle with care.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a commentary on we get guilty, we go through our lives, and you see somebody there's a funny story for you, and it's not what the song's about, but I went to a gas station one day and my wife was in a car, and this guy was losing his mind. He was filling up his guitar or his car, and he was screaming at people. And it was like, oh my God, is this guy like coming unhinged? Is he going to pull a gun out? Is he going to rob? And I'm like, what is going on there? And my wife said to me, you never know what somebody else is going through that day. You never know what happened in their lives or in their families and everything, and it was like my wife, I love her to bits. She's a bit of a tree hugger, and she's like, we gotta treat people with respect and care. There was a little bit of that message in there that you never know what's going on in somebody's life, and Maya and I were going through some challenges in our own families, and we thought it was quite a topical subject to handle people with care. So I came up with those lines, if you see me, handle with care, please don't break me, handle with care. And I just gave it to her, and I had a little sort of whisper vocal on it, and then the rest she just took it on her own and does what Maya does best, and wrote some fantastic lyrics and made it a little bit more personal. But that track is so vibey, and Alex started building it, and it started off very sparse, and then as the song progresses, he starts adding more on it, starts to become epic by the end. But it's a personal favorite of mine for the vibe of the song and the message that we're trying to deliver.
Wow, that's awesome. And another track, I mean, I like a lot of the stuff on here. The end, I like that cool opening bass line, just like Not Dead Yet, where, I mean, I'm not comparing the two songs, but Not Dead Yet, your bass goes right through the whole song.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Do they call that, is musician talk, do they call that the walking bass under the chorus, or I don't know what?
Well, okay. So it's interesting. You talk about, wearing our influences on our sleeves. And I literally picked up the bass and started strumming it like a guitar, and that's that song sort of features that, as you said, coming in, and if I, full transparency, like I remember the first time I heard somebody do that on the bass guitar was, Space Lord Mother the Trucker, or whatever it was, like, what's that band? Space Lord Mother. They're a metal band.
Monster Magnet.
Monster Magnet. I was like, this is brilliant. Oh my God, the guy's playing bass guitar like it's acoustic, right? And it just stuck with me on it. And many, many years later, I thought, well, stretch out a bit on the bass, and that strumming and that sort of rhythmic feel is guilty as charged. I'm playing the bass guitar doubled left and right, strumming it like a guitar, but laying it down on the bass. And I know guitar players might, do that with a 6-string guitar or a detuner or a baritone guitar, as they call it, right? But I think it sets the tone for the track and gives it that mood.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff. But before we get into the title track of the album, I just want to show everybody the packaging. I cut the seal there when we were talking about the songs, but there we go on the inside, the CD. And for everybody out there, you can obviously get this on, I think it's what, black vinyl, blue vinyl, or
pink vinyl,
pink vinyl, a box set, a Blu-ray. It's all out there. You folks if you're going to stream it, just buy a physical copy of it. And inside, no expenses spared. You got the lyrics. Look at that. Badass shot of the band. And,
look at those guys. They look cool.
And I have to say, yeah, they do look cool. And look at that, Andy. You got 4 drummers on this album. Did any of them explode like in Spinal Tap, or?
Each of them exploded, which is why we went, oh my God, Randy Cook exploded. Now we're going to have to go talk to Joe Vitale. He exploded. Now we're going to have to talk to Ty Dennis and David Steinberg. No, honestly, man, the drummer thing, Alex was very vocal about near the end of the debut record. You know, he started saying that his favorite tracks on the debut record were ones that we used a human drummer on, because we had a lot of loops and backing tracks and syncopated beats and industrial sounding stuff. And, you know, when you like, they lack a human feel. They're consistent. They're machines. They're boom, boom, boom on, right? And so when you say that when people say that the Stygian Waves record sounds a bit more like a band, because there's the movement in the tracks. Everything's not on a grid. It's not pasted, and it's not a machine, right? So we went into the second album wanting to work with humans and drummers. And so it started off, obviously David played on the first record, David Steinberg, and same with Ty Dennis, with That Was Then. And so we just revisited those old relationships with these guys. I've played in multiple bands with Randy Cook. He's one of my all-time favorite drummers in the world. So have Randy play on this is amazing. And then the fanboy comes out in me that I can't believe that, you know, that Joe Vitale would play on a record that I'm part of. He's one of my heroes. So, and they all have very different styles. And we spoke about it going into it. We really hit a groove with Randy, and Alex instantly fell in love with him. So, you know, the tail end of the record, when he started delivering tracks, everybody's like, oh yeah, send the next one to Randy and send the next one to Randy. So that's why you see it sort of skewed more to Randy Cook on it, because there was something, and I mean this respectfully, nothing to do with what the other drummers played on, but there was something that really clicked with Randy, and we were like, oh my God, man, he's really got the vibe nailed. And so we ended up using him for more tracks than we thought we were going to originally, because he just knocked it out of the park, and we wanted to scratch that itch with Randy a little bit more.
Wow. Yeah, that's and you know what? That's the thing. Like, some of the drummings really ramps up the songs as well, especially towards the end of some of the tracks. Like, I'm thinking of is it The Thrill of the Chase?
Thrill of the Chase and Stygian. Yeah, he goes crazy.
Yeah, it's excellent stuff. Now, live shows, Envy and None. I know it's been floated out there, and I had one of my buddies who's out in Portland, Andrew. He knew I was going to be talking to you, and he says he's a Rush guy and an Envy and None guy, and he just said, ask Andy about live shows. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay. Well, we've had a lot of discussions about playing live, and it's I would say that once the record was completed, completing the record was the number one topic on the conversation. Let's get this sucker out. Let's finish it. And then it started talking about, oh man, wouldn't it be awesome to play some live shows? What a great cherry on top that would be, just to play these in a really cool venue, like a theater, an intimate theater, where we can control the lighting, we can control the visuals, the sound is you're immersed in it. And excuse me, and it just sort of evolved into, why don't we continue this conversation, and why don't we release the record and see what the reception's like, and maybe, you know, run a few budgets on what it would cost to put together a live show, and what other musicians would we use, because there's no way the four of us could pull this off on our own without adding, you know, obviously a drummer, an extra guitar player, a keyboard player, some vocalists. So we've actually gone as deep as having conversations within the band on, okay, who would those candidates be? And should we reach out to them? And should we see if they're interested in doing it, right? So all I can tell you is we're definitely entertaining it. There's nothing etched in stone right now, but everybody kind of loves the idea of maybe playing a few shows. I don't think we would do a long tour. It's just not in the cards certainly for Alex. He's been there, done it. but
Yep.
maybe a few one-offs. We're absolutely talking about it right now. So it's hopefully next time we talk, either you're going to say, "Oh, dude, that was a great show that you guys did, and I was there," or "I just heard your announcement." But we've got to go through some stages here and figure out, because the time and the effort to put together a couple shows is the same effort that we put into if we were doing 30 shows. So it's still a lot of work. It's still a lot of rehearsals. You mentioned it about the tones and the sounds. We want to be really thorough to make sure that we could replicate that live. So there's a lot of discussion going in on it, but it's good discussions. It's not like, hey, we can't pull this off. It's like, hey, boy, wouldn't that be fun to do some live shows?
Well, there we go, folks. There's the answer. So maybe we'll see some live action, and that'd be fantastic. So, Andy, wrapping up, here's my top 6 Envy and None tracks, and it changes, and it expanded. I had to pick a couple off the debut.
Okay.
So I went with Liar and Dog's Life.
Ooh, nice. Both of them have some good teeth to it. I love that. Good choices.
They got teeth. That's what I like about them. And and then I went with on the current album, Not Dead Yet, The Story.
Yep.
Under the Stars, Wham Bam.
Did I tell you that Stygian Waves was called Wham Bam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why Wham Bam is actually the title of the album. That was the working title. So I thought I'm gonna get you one or the other here.
Yeah, dude, that's so awesome that you knew about Wham Bam. We do this stupid thing, especially Alpha and I, where we'll name a song as we're working on it, right? And so I was working. The Seed of Stygian Waves was one of mine, and I just was working on it one night, and I was like, oh, what am I going to call this file? Wham Bam. I just put it on there, right? And so as we started working on it, everybody was like, well, we can't call the song Wham Bam. That's like, what the heck is that? And then they were like, Andy, are you going to be bummed out if we don't call it Wham Bam? I'm like, no. And then we were like, well, what if we call it Stygian Waves? Like that'll be the title track of the album, right? But that's funny that you knew about Wham Bam. Guilty as Charged. I could show you some files of working songs that I'm working on that you're like, dude, you've lost your mind. What did you call that song, right? But it's just to put a name on it, and I go back and look at some of the songs that I'm currently working on, and I'll see the title and go, I don't even remember writing that. What is that? And I'll click open and go, okay, it was just a working title.
Oh, that's hilarious. And as the 6-pack of tracks, I had to go with a bonus song, and it came down to 2. It was either going to be That Was Then, which was obviously on your EP from a few years back, which was it reworked up for this, or did you guys just basically keep it the same?
Are you talking about That Was Then?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So we did, it's a completely new mix. We, and musicians and engineers and producers are guilty of this, like if I could go back and remix Dog's Life, I would love to do that, because I think it didn't come off as powerful as I was hoping it would. And so when we did the EP, I think we did a remix extended version of it, which I feel is a little bit better. But for That Was Then, we just felt that that we didn't quite nail it on the EP with the mix. So we reapproached it and did some different balances. I don't think we added any extra tracks. If anything, we might have removed some and just made it, pack a little bit more of a wallop on it.
Mm-hmm. And but that's not the one I went with. It was a tie. I went with as we talked about earlier, the fantastic Handle with Care.
Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I still get goosebumps. I'll play that track and go, oh my god, like when you step away from the painting sometimes and you go, man, I'm so proud of that song for a variety of reasons, but it's just got such a special vibe, I think, that song.
Totally. And so, Andy, in wrapping up, what are your 3 desert island picks?
Okay. I'm glad you asked me that, because I've got one of them right beside me, and I will show you this one.
Sure.
I spent some time searching for the Golden Earring Moon Tan extended version. This is like if you're a Golden Earring fan, this is such a great, like that was the original cover, right? But it's got like some outtakes in it and really nice packaging on it. So, I mean, I love Radar Love, but you know, when I look at the track listing here with, you know, Candy's Going Bad and Vanilla Queen and everything, I absolutely adore that record. So that would be number one. I mentioned to you my love for Aerosmith, and I still don't think they've ever topped Rocks. And if there was a close second, it would be Toys in the Attic. But I love Rocks. I played the crap out of it, and you know, because if I was going to be stuck on a desert island, I wouldn't want to be pounding rock every day. So I'd probably just go with you know, with the best of Bob Marley, just so I could chill underneath the palm tree and have a pineapple with a straw in it and listen to some Bob Marley.
There you go. It doesn't get any better than that. And Andy, continued success with the latest Envy and None Stygian Waves.
Thank you, my bud. I appreciate that.
As always, thanks for always making time to come on my little stream show here and just talk music, pal. You're one of the best, and like I said, I appreciate you. Last week you're doing Eddie Trunk. This week you're hanging with Deke. Bless you, man. You're one of the best.
I love it, dude. No, I always enjoy jumping on with you. It's like talking to a buddy. The only thing we're missing is a couple cold beers to clink, but we'll do that next time I see you, dude. And I appreciate the time.
You bet. And before we let you go, everybody can hit up andycurranmusic.com. I'll leave a link in the write-up, and you can still grab a copy of Andy's fantastic reissue of the No Tattoos record. Look at those guys in the back there.
Yeah, look at those handsome fellows. I will tell you, I'm going to do one little plug for this Whiskey and the Devil record.
Sure.
I'm just getting ready, like I did with Caramel and Drug Plan, to get that record up on Spotify, Apple, all of the streaming. So there is something around the corner cooking up with Whiskey and the Devil here, and it'll be all of the, like, because if you try to search right now, I believe you can't find my solo record. We pulled that down, and we're just about to put up that one. So stand by on that. I'm hoping to get that up within the next month, and that'll have all the extra tracks on it and some of the, you know, I'm talking to the guys at Sing, the record company that I worked with, to see whether we're going to put the live stuff up there, but we'll certainly put the studio stuff up there right away. Okay.
I'm going to tell you right now, don't put the live stuff up there. Keep it as the hardcore fan to search and seek it out. People are going to hate on me now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But you know what? Give them some, but don't give them all.
No, well, it's funny you said that. We were talking about maybe making it a separate release later on. Going, there you go. There's the live stuff, because there's not a lot of live AC stuff out there, right? But
okay,
we'll get those studios things up for sure, buddy. And I always appreciate the support, and stay warm up in T-Bay, and see if you can find that Ketchum guy wandering around. Apparently he's a good golfer, and he's getting ready to get some golfing happening. Our beloved Coney Hatch drummer. So Deke, good to see you, bud.
Thanks, Andy. And as always, we'll be checking in with you later this year.
See you, pal.